Okay, awesome. So far we have been focusing on connecting to our different data sources because, like I said, as a data person, a data scientist, a data analyst, a business analyst, a business intelligence analyst, anyone that you want to fall under, you definitely need to be able to source your data from wherever the data is located. And then once you source the data, now it will give you you have to now bring in the data into your Python environment, and then you begin to manipulate it as you want to get the expected results that you need. So we started by looking at how we could source data from a CSV file where we were using the pandas, and we're using the function in pandas, which is read underscore CSV. We saw how you can read data from an Excel file or an Excel sheet, which was the function read underscore Excel. We could read data from a TSV, which was read underscore table. We could read data from a web page, which is read underscore HTML. We had the possibility to read data from from a JSON file, which was JSON.load, and then use the open function to bring in the data. So all these, we might not explore all the possible options from which you want to source your data, or all the possible options through which you would ever have data, because like you can have a data in a data warehouse. But the thing is that from these core concepts, you understand that the basis will be almost the same, right? They will be almost the same. All you need to do is look up which function you need to use or which connector you need to use to connect to the data source, and then check whether the data source, first of all, has an integration with Python first, or it has a connector with Python that you can use to connect to the data source, and then you pull in the data into Python before you begin to manipulate the data. So this is very important, and that is why we are spending our time and going through all the most common sources. And then if you now find yourself in a situation whereby the source is not within what we have looked at, then you can actually always go to Google and check out how to connect to that data source from Python, which at the end of the day, the principles will all remain the same. The parameters might just change and the functions might just change. And then the principles are all the same, like what we already know. We already know so far. So I remember in the last class, we actually imported our data from we imported our data from a JSON file, and then we were trying to whip that data into a data frame. And I think we were having some challenges because my head was already saturated. I don't even know what we were doing. I think this is, so I think we ended here, right? So we use the JSON function to import data from a JSON file. And so if I run this, can I restart this kernel and run all? Don't know why, but for some reason it runs but doesn't give me the output. Okay. I think we are good now. Okay, so now in our last class, this was the JSON file that we looked at. We called it data. You see, this is where we imported the data, and we called our variable data. And so we use the JSON.load function from the JSON package. The load function is in the JSON package, and then we use the open function, which is commonly in Python. And then that was how we were able to read our JSON file into Python. And then we went ahead now so what we ended up trying to do was to flip this data frame into this JSON file into a data frame where we could have the keys as the column names, and then the the values as our values, and then we got stuck there. So prior to the class today, when I was going back through the lessons that we had, I just came up with this other function here, which will help us do that. So this function is is in pandas, it's called JSON underscore normalize. Okay, so if I do a shift tab here, let's explore this function and see why I chose to use this function for this purpose. So let's see. Okay, so the first thing is that the function takes a dictionary, right? The function can take a dictionary. It can take a list of dictionary. Can you see this? It can take a dictionary because the input is data, and that data can be a dictionary. It can be a list of dictionaries. So, and then it takes record path, separator, blah, 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 maximum level, and all of these different parameters. But here I use two of these parameters, which were very important. The first one is dictionary. This one, I chose it because, see, let me show you. If this function is going to take the data part is going to take a list of, it can take a list of dictionaries, like a list that contains dictionaries. That's what I want you to take. And so that gives me some room to be able to play around with this. And then I use this separator part. And here we were just saying that when you separate, so I'll explain it. Let me just show you the data again, and then I'll explain how this separator part comes in really, really handy. Okay, so let me start with the fact that the input data, whether our input data satisfies any of these conditions that are predefined here. So these are the parameters, and they are telling you the kind of data that those parameters actually do accept, right? So I'm gonna, so let's see our data, right? See, do you notice that we had just one key? See, if I do, okay, if I do data.key, data, uh, if I do data.key, you see that, oh, let me just do data and then I get a student, right? Because that's the only key that we have in data as a whole. Oh, did I get student? Oh, sorry. Yeah, it should work. Student, what do I have? Students. Okay, there's an S there. Students. Okay. So you see, when we do students, we get the actual data, right? Because the thing is that if I do, okay, let me close this thing and then explain a little more so that you can understand why I chose that function. So if I do data dot keys, is it keys or key? You see that there's only one key and it's student. Of course, you can see that from your data, right? There's only one key, which is here, because it's some sort of a nested dictionary. So you see, this is your key, and then it has a value, which is a list. And that list contains what? Dictionaries. So your list contains dictionaries, right? So if I pick students, it's going to return this, like you see here. You see, if I pick students here, it returns the whole data. And you see that this is a list. See, this is the opening and this is the end. And this list contains what? Dictionaries, right? You can see that this is a list of dictionaries. You can see this. It's clear. So now, so if I come back here and I do shift tab, and then I expand this thing again, you see that I can actually input a list of dictionaries to this function in the place of data, and then I use my separator. It could be anything. By default, it is this, but I choose to use an underscore of anything. But then this is what happens. When you use the separator, what happens is that for a case, in the case of a nested, in the case of a nested, in the case of a nested dictionary like address, where is address? Oh, did I remove address here for some reason? Okay, like in the case of a nested dictionary for an address, you see this is the key, and within this dictionary, there's another key, key and value, key and value. So what happens is that it's going to rewrite, when you use the separator is going to take the first key, which is address. So it's going to take address, and then It's going to use this first key, which is the main key, and then it's going to use, okay, for my case, I use an underscore. It's going to do underscore. The first part is the first key again is street, right? And then it's going to use address again, and then the second key this time around underscore. The second key this time around is city, right? City. And then I use address again. It's going to do address again. And then this time around, the underscore, the key this time around is going to be postal code, right? It's going to be, so we use city and then postal zip code. So we're going to have zip code. So here you have zip code. So that's what that separator will do. And you see that once it does this, these becomes individual entities on their own, right? These become individual entities on their own, and then it can now feed this into a data frame. So this is the function. This is the function that was going to help us do the job. So so once you do this, so if I now read after running this function, if I run this function, right? Maybe let me take this one out so that I do not confuse you. If I run this function and then I return ZF, you are going to see that we're going to have a data frame now, right? Where our names, our ages, our student, the skills, all of that can now run as columns and records. So this is where we were yesterday. Oh, in our last class, and this is where we ended, and this was the only thing that we took home to look at it and then come back to this. So today we're going to continue to see how we can source data from other sources. So this was how you can get data from a JSON file, and maybe you want to get the data from a JSON file and you want to write that data to a data frame. That is how you are going to do it. So let's see some other options that we have, and then we understand what we have to do in case of that. So the next thing I have on my list after JSON is API. So we can also read data from an API. I think I have some. So let me copy this so that I can just take it down. I don't know what I have here, but I just want to make this book organized. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to share this API with you on in the chat. Best man, as usual, please help me pass this within the class group so that every other person can pick it up and then is able to run it and they are in. So this is the API we're going to be using. I just it's a free API, okay? So don't bother, nobody's going to chat you. Yeah, thank you, best man. Please just put it in the WhatsApp group so that it's there for those that are coming in after. We should be able to have it. Let me see. Did I copy the right link? No, I'm sure oh, there's this line here. I don't know. Okay. So this is the API where this is where the data is located. So this is the data we are trying to pick. So it's a free API, okay? So don't be scared. Nobody is going to attack you. So we can use it directly. Okay. So let's come back to our pandas frame. So we confirm that there's data in that this is the data. So let's see how to read in that data. So so the first thing you're going to do is we just have to create a variable called URL. You can call it anything, but it just makes sense to call it URL because it's intuitive. is going to be this. Gosh, I don't think this is correct. Let me pick this one. Let me just pick this as a variable. So you're going to create this variable called URL, and then you pass that link, the one that I've sent to you, the link to the API. It's a free API, and then we're going to create another this thing called, we can create another variable called response, which is equals to, this is the function we are going to use, right? So we do request dot get, and then you passed. So now what we are using, we want to get from where? Because if I do shift tab will work here, shift tab is not working. Yeah, that's because it's dot and tab work. My tab is also not working, but here we're just going to pass the URL. Okay, I was trying to pull up the other option. So now you just can do something, you can do a check, because like I can see if response dot status is equal 200. Now the thing is 200, when you get a 200 response, it checks if the if the it checks if the listing was successful, right? Did you install any package to enable your get method? Oh, nope, nope, nope. I think it's inbuilt. I didn't install any package. It's inbuilt.
Okay,
So
sir.
yeah, I think it's inbuilt. But if we run it and we don't get it, then we'll see how to pull it up. But I think it's inbuilt. So we're just checking if the response was successful. But remember, you are going into a web page. So this is just like check and then we say that we can now store the result equals to we can store it as a response dot JSON, which is a function, right? Yeah. And then we can then we could do else. This else is just then we this else is just to maybe to say, you can say print, you can say the response was unsuccessful. Maybe this is just a way to check, right? You must not check. You can just decide and go straight and then and run it, and it's still gonna work without using the if else. It's still gonna work, right? Yeah. So if we run this, and then we can now return data, and then we see what we get. Requests, let's spell it request. Maybe I have to request. I have to install this request. Let me see. I have to import it. Let me see. Let me just let me see if I have to import this one directly. Import.
I think we have to install it.
Yeah,
When you
that's, let
said
me first of
pip
all, I want
install
to import
request,
it first and see if I have it on my this thing. If it's not there, then I'll install it. I think it's there.
exclamation mark.
I think you now go to Chanel. Maybe I don't even know. Yeah, that place is
Yeah,
work.
I have it
I
here.
honestly had tomorrow and if I didn't get 1,000. What? That's data.
Can I just
So
add
if
this?
your own is not there, you just do pip install. Okay, mine is there. I just imported it and it came in.
But
You
they
see?
have to put the exclamation mark before the pip install, since on the notebook to make it run.
I'm not getting you.
Exclamation mark.
Oh, so
If
that
you
if
have,
it is
if, yeah,
it just shows
if
that
install,
this thing was successful. It was already, the request was already made.
okay.
I'm just saying if you run your own and it's not successful, please just import it. So I've imported my own and then I can run it again. Response does status. Response object has no attribute status. Is it status or status? Status code, not status, sorry. Okay, now I got my data. Somebody is sending install request. Okay, do not forget to include the exclamation. So this is the data that I have. And so you can see it's a list of dictionary, username, blah, 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 blah. And then can I just, if I write this thing to a, can we check? This is a JSON file, right? I told you mostly see data in the form of JSON, especially for semi-structured data. So this is a JSON file. We can play around with the file to see what we have, right? And we can even pass it to our function above and write it to a data frame and see what we get. So maybe I'll just I'll just do df1 should be equals to pd dot json, I'll just spell it json underscore normalize and then here we're just gonna pass data, right? Because this one we don't need to even subset it, and then we can just say if I left this separator as if I leave it as default, right? I think it's still gonna run.
Prof.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please, how did you solve the response object has no attribute status? How did you solve that issue? Because that's what my own is giving
What response? What is the error you got?
me. Attribute error. Response. Then it says object has no attribute status.
Oh, it's status code. Status code. I spelled it wrongly. It's status code. Status code. There's an underscore code there. Do you see this?
Okay.
Status underscore code. Have you seen that?
Yes, let me implement.
You see, I've converted that all of that data to a data frame, right? It has the user ID, the user LD, then there's an ID, then there's a title, then there's a body. All right. See, it's a whole data frame with over 90 something records. So this is how you could pull it from. So what I was saying is that this is just a check, okay? You must not do this, right? Otherwise, you would have just passed this and then you write this one and then this one directly without necessarily having to go through this thing. But it's just good to check it just so you are sure that, so that if you get an error, you should be able to know that what is wrong with what is happening. Could be network or something. Let me know if we are together. Mr. Tony, did you succeed?
Yes, I'm trying to type the last code, the df1 code.
The pd.json normalize function that we used above, right? Is the same
Yes.
thing. We just applied it here because when I look at this data here, I see that it's a list of dictionaries, right? You see, if I just look at this first, I see this is a list of dictionaries. So I can just go ahead and normalize it, and then I flip it into a data frame, right?
So how do we import the request? How do we install request? Because mine is saying that
Check
no
the chat.
module name request.
Check the
Module
chat.
not found.
Check the chat. Best man just please put the code in chat. Check the chat. Is that clear? Check the chat. Best man just left the code. It says
Okay.
exclamation mark pip.install request. It's on the chat.
So, sorry, this is your normalize. Is it inbuilt in PD? Can you scroll down slightly?
It's a
Normalize
pandas. It's a pandas
the
function. Sorry.
pandas function.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
pandas function. That's why I had to use
Okay.
PD, right?
Call it.
Is a where
PD.
the thing
Oh,
is?
JSON normalize. Oh, the
It's
JSON.
JSON underscore normalize. It's a pandas function.
Okay. 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 Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
it just breaks down your dictionary and then you can easily flip it down to a data frame.
Okay.
Are we together?
So, yeah, because
Yeah,
yeah.
I was just researching and I found the function. It's powerful.
Mm.
Okay, can we continue? Can we continue?
Yeah, I'm good.
We can go. Okay, let me give 1 more minute for the others to catch up. And then let's go. While you are catching up, let me go up and put the next topic that we're going to be looking at and bring it down so that we can use it as our guide as we go through. These things we are doing, these are things you do on a daily basis when you are at work. Mind you, there's nothing here that we are doing that you think it's just foul play. Nothing. All these things are things that every day you find yourself writing. So what do you normally do, right? What I do, for example, is that if I find myself getting to do all these all the times, I just write my functions, my modules. I just create modules, right? I just create modules and put all these functions inside. Like I actually can have a module that imports, that reads data directly from a MySQL database, right? I have a module that reads data from a MySQL database, and then I don't have, anytime I need to read data from a MySQL database, I don't have to create another module again. I just change the parameters and boom, my data is in. Oh, can we go to MySQL database? There's some explanation here I have to do before we actually can do it. Because I know we've not treated SQL, so if I just go ahead and and just jump into connecting to SQL, tomorrow we will come and have just 2 people in class. So let me look for Madam Vandoline. I saw your message. You were indicating you were unable to install MySQL. Sorry, it's been a busy week. Most of the times, if you reach out to me and I don't respond, please, there's this guy in the group called Toby. Please pin Toby too as well. He'll be able to help you out, okay? This was crazy. This week was just crazy for me. I'm sorry I was unable to respond to you, but if you still haven't solved the problem, then let's meet up sometime this week and then see how we can do that. So this is your SQL database. Hope I still remember mine. Okay, I got you. Oh, I even had something created here. Ooh. So can we just use this one? So this time, since we are still going to learn MySQL, right? So I just don't want to spend a lot of time. Okay, let's see. So this is your, for those that you have, for those that were able to install.
Yeah, I
So
don't
there
want
is,
to go me outside. So,
there is a function in MySQL. So once you come in, you sign into your SQL database after installing it, right? You sign in. I don't know whether you sign in. I don't know whether you're going to be here or you're going to be here. If you're going to be here, I think if I close this. So these are my different schemas that I have. You see, I have a couple of them here. And so this one I use this one for the other bash. We are just going to use it because I'm not going to create another one for you, but for you guys explicitly. So so what you do is I'm going to create a database called Glorious Bash. I could just change this to Champions Bash, right? I can say create a database called Champion. Then so when you do this, so you run this function, create database. This is the function, and then you give the name of the database that you want. Oh, sorry. So the name of my database is Champion. Then you put a semicolon at the end. It's either you run it from here, you execute it from here, or you use Command Enter, Control Enter, right? So you see down here you get the result. Create database Champion. So I want to use that database that I've called Champion. So if I come here, I use Champion, I change Glorious Batch to Champion, and then I execute it. So if I come here, see, if I refresh over here small, you see I have a new database called Champion, right? So create table. So I want to create tables inside that database called Champion, and then I'm going to run this line of code, all of these. So let me just share this with you guys, and then I'll explain it. I don't want to waste time here because we actually have there's one of our modules in data science which is dedicated only for SQL. So instead of taking our Python time to learn SQL, let's use it for Python. Then when we get to SQL, we're gonna spend time. So I'm sharing this code, this is my SQL code with you, okay? So that we just have some sample records. The reason why we're having this is just so we can connect to it and do some work for now. So please feel free to pick it and run it at your own end. And so so here you just have create table. So you are creating a table, right? So instead of calling it G students, I want to call them C students, right? Because glory or champion students. So I'm going to run that function undo. I'm going to run it. So I've created that table. And then so this is creatable. That's the name of the function. That's the cool thing with SQL. It's just so it's like English. It's like you are writing English as far as you understand the syntax. So you have create table in the name of your table. When I say create table, you know, when you create a table, so people don't think that it's anything different. It's just a table now. So if I come here, okay, I'm going to show you the table so that you see. So here I'm just going to use this function called insert into no, this is not G students. So this time around is C students. Now look at what is going to happen. Okay, so when I was creating the table, I gave the variable names that are going to be on the table, the column names. I said there was going to be an ID and it's going to be an integer. There's going to be a name, and I said a name is going to be a variable character. That's what is called varchar, a variable character that can take at most 100 characters. I have a column for age, which is going to be an integer, and then there's a column for sex, which is going to be a variable. What this means, right? So you see that the things we learned in Python, they are not going to waste because you already know what. And if my ID, I'm defining my ID to be an integer, you already know what that means. If I'm saying my ID should be a name which is a variable character, this means it's a string. You know what that means. And of length, it should be of maximum length, 100. You know what that means, right? My age should be of integer. You know what that means. So after defining these columns, I now come and insert the values into the columns, right? I say insert into C students, ID, name, age, sex, and then I pass the values, right? Somebody's asking me a question. Somebody needs you to help put that code in the WhatsApp group. Best man, can you do that, please? The code that the the SQL code that I just used to create that I just used. So now this is going to be inserted into C students. We're going to see all of this when we get to SQL. You see all this syntax, but I don't want to spend time on it now, but I just want to explain what we are doing here. So we've created a different record. So this is going to be the ID, this is going to be the name, this is going to be the age, this is going to be the sex. The same thing for 3. I've done that for 3 different students. So now this is it. So I'm going to run it. I've created that. Now I want to see the table. So that's when you want to see the table, I say select from, you see, this is the name of our table, right? Select star. You remember when I said import star from this thing, import star, it means import everything. So select star from C student means you are selecting everything. And if I keep using shift enter instead of control enter here. So this is my table. So you see the ID is the column name, the age, the sex. So this is the table that I've created. And you see the record, John Doe 20 male, blah, 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 blah. So this is the data. So let's see if we can actually connect to this database and then pull this data into Python, right? This table, this one. So that's the goal here. So this is a database, right? This is MySQL database. It's a relational database. You can read more about it when you have time. So our goal today is to connect to it, and then we read the data from the MySQL database, and then after reading the data, and then we try to see how it looks like. Okay, so we've created our database. Who was following along? If you were following along and you think you're having some challenges, please let me know. But if nobody was following along, I can as well go alone. Let me get some reaction, please. If you are actually following along with me, can I get some reaction from you?
I think you are very fast.
Oh, I was fast. But do you have your MySQL open?
Yes, but I don't have the code.
I sent the code in the chat. I told you I placed the code in the chat. It's in the chat. All this code is in the chat. Go to the chat in the what I think Best Man has even put it in the WhatsApp group if I'm not mistaken. Go to the chat in our Zoom meeting. You have the code there, okay?
I don't think it's on WhatsApp. I'm using my phone to.
Oh, great. If you're using your phone, then I don't know how to help you then. But I
But
have the
it's fine, you
code.
can go on.
Is the code in the chat?
Yes, it's in the chat. I shared it. Oh, was I talking to myself when I was sharing it? You guys are not looking at the chat. Madam Prudence even came and pleaded with you, Best Man, to put the code in the WhatsApp group. Right? The code is in the chat.
It's there. It's there. Thank you.
Yeah, this is the code that I used to create the data. Just because we've not learned SQL, so that's why I was writing that. I shared the code with you because I did not expect you all to write that code. Okay, fine. So we're there. Let's connect to the database now. So I'm going to go back to my Python script. So the first thing you have to do, you have to install this, right? You can install this. I just installed these two because I didn't actually know which one was the most updated. So let me share this with you. Then I'm going to explain. I actually peeped installing myself.
Best Man, have you seen the codes? Please, can you share them on WhatsApp?
This second code that I've shared is the code for the SQL, which is our Python code. I'm just helping you, but you're actually going to know how to write it yourself. It's quite simple. So let's see what we're going to do. So normally, you are going to pip install. If you don't have it, I'm not going to pip install because I already have it. You can pip install all of these. I already have it, so I'm not going to do it. So what I'm only going to do, I'm only going to import it directly because I don't need to install it again. I already have it. So I just need to import it on my own. So now it's imported. Now, once it is imported, now I have to create my connection, right? So I just use the variable name called my database. My database is equals to, so I'm just creating my variable name call. So, and then once you install this thing, you see what I imported, right? So I'm going to say MySQL. This is my SQL because basically this is the connector because that's the database we are using. So if it's a different database, if it's Oracle, if it's MongoDB, MariaDB, or whatever DB you are using, the connector might be different. Okay, so don't come and use this one and say that's what Prof showed us. So we are using a MySQL database now, so that's why we're using this connector. Because if you want to use a different database, just check the connector for that database. It's going to be available, readily available. You just have to copy it and use it. So I'm going to create a connector, and then and within this function called I would have even imported this thing as a with an alias name, but let's just type it all. There's a function in it called connect, right? There's a function in it called connect. And for you to connect, you need the following things that you need, right? You are going to need your host. I'm going to show you your host, which is, so if you do shift tab here, I think you should be able to see it. Oh, shit. Your host should be equals to, let me come, because yours might be different, no? So when you come to your MySQL, right? When you come to your MySQL workbench, you can come to administration, and then you come to client connections. No, this one is different. So you see, this is not the one I'm looking for. Let me see server status, whether it's going to give me them. Yeah. So this is the host, but this is not the one I like. I want to see the connection. One way to quickly see the connection is to, so I'm looking for the fastest way to see the connection. I'm just looking whether there's a shortcut here because I have my own way. Yes.
When I did my select all from GStudent, it's showing an error. Why?
Why is it? It's because you created it as G student. Are you sure you created it? Do you have the database as G student?
Like the table name to be GStudent.
No, what I'm saying is that you need to first of all create the database.
Yeah, I've done
When
that.
you write this code, once you put your cursor here and run this line of code, you have to run this line of code. You can run it using this button over here. If I hit this button, that's me running the code. Or I do Control Enter. I'm going to execute this line of code. And then I'm going to say use, and then I'm going to execute this line of code again. And then all of these you can see is one line of code, like an if-else statement, right? Just one line of code. I'm not saying that if-else, so it's just one body. This is the opening bracket, you see where it ends. So this is where you are defining the column names of your table, right? So you are going to put this thing here and hit shift enter or execute. You have to execute each line of the code. You cannot, there's nothing like run all here. So you have to create each of these variables. And then this another block again, which ends here. So you have to put your cursor here again and execute it again, right? These are things that you were supposed to be manually typing them. And then when you finish typing, you execute. So since you are copying, that's why I'm showing you where your cursor is supposed to stand. After each semicolon, that's where you're going to execute. So you're going to have to execute this. And if you have executed all of this and then your cursor, you come down here before you execute this, before you get results. Otherwise, there's nothing like run all here. Is that clear?
Sorry, what's the keyboard for run? Shortcut. Is it
It's
shift enter?
control enter, please. Control enter. Control and enter.
Control.
Control Enter, not Shift.
Oh, Control Enter.
I think if you hover over this thing, it's going to give you, they don't give you the shortcut here. But it's Control Enter if you want to do that. So I was trying to look at these are the databases. I don't know, connect to a database. Let me see, connect to a database. So, okay, here you see the user is root, and then password. You already have your password. You said your password yourself, but this is where I actually get my information. Let me close this. So once I want to check my connection, what I always do is that so the moment I just log in, if you want to get that information, so what I do is that I can just close this thing, right? I can just close this thing, and if I open it again, I hope it doesn't just go. It has to give me the opportunity. Okay, now I have to actually hit this. You see, it gives you all that information here. You see, your user is root, and then your host is local. Local host means that if you are hosting this database on your computer, right? But if it were hosted in the cloud, if you are working for a company, companies don't host their database on their local computer. So it will be hosted somewhere in the cloud. Then your database administrator is going to give you all of that information. You just have to ask, and they are going to provide you all that information. So you need that information, and you will never access your database as a root user. They will never permit you because it's a lot of privilege. So they will have to create a user for you, and then they'll give you all that information. So all this information like this is going to be provided to you, right? So, but for me, I'm hosting it on my computer, so that's why it's called local. So I'm going to be hosting on my local host, right? That's why I'm calling it local. And then I saw that my user was root. If in your case, they might create a different user for you. So my user is root. I'm a root user, and then you have your password. This should be the password you created when you were linking to that database. When you were creating that database, you created a password. If you have forgotten, you have to go and reset it. And then database. Now, which database are we connecting to, right? I created a database name, so I have to change this one too, because this one I was calling it weekend, but I think I used the database name I used was it C champion? So what was the database name? Create database champion. Okay, it was champion, not C champion. It was just champion. So that's going to be my database name. So that's the database I'm accessing. So these are all the parameters you need. And then this is all you need to provide. All of this information, if you're working for a company, they are going to give you all this information. You just need to ask them for it. Your database administrators are going to give all of these to you. So don't ask me, Prof, where am I going to get this information from? We are putting all of this because I created this for myself. I created this champion for myself. I created it's a root user, so I did not create a user for myself. I did not explicitly create a user. I'm hosting it on my computer, and this is my password that I've created, so it's up to you. So once you do that, you can run this. Oh, MySQL.connect. MySQL is not defined. Did I not import this? Oh, sure, sorry, it's not M, it's my. Okay, so now I've run it. And then now I have to create what we call a cursor. Now, what do I mean by a cursor? A cursor is going to be like an executor, because this is, remember, this is Python, not SQL. So I have to create something that's called a cursor that is going to be able to let me run SQL commands within Python, right? So, for example, if I come to my SQL command and then I see oh, oh, What is that command? I've even forgotten some of these SQL commands. Is it view tables? And then I have a semicolon here. If I run this view tables, what's that command? I'm trying to check any funny SQL command that I can execute. Okay, for example, why am I even stressing myself? Let's look at this command. This command that says select star from C student. This is an SQL command. If I execute this command, right? If I execute this command, it's going to show me, oh, what happened? Who is using G glorious student here? But I have champion, right? Okay. Create database, champion database exists. Okay. And so if champion database exists, then I use it and create these variables that already exist. So if these records already exist, so why? Okay, now it works. You're crazy. So if I use this, so within this database, when I run this command, it gives me this table. This is a SQL command. So let's also see if we can run this command within Python using the cursor like I was talking about. Let me come to my Python environment. So let's create a cursor. So now, how do we create a cursor? We remember this variable that we created here called MyDB, right? So you just create, you can say cursor, we call my cursor, it could be anything or anything or anything. You give it any name, but I think some of my names are supposed to be inclusive. I can just say my cursor is equals to, so it's going to be the connection that you name, the name of your connection, which is MyDB dot cursor. And then that is going to be, this is once you create this, it's going to be like a pointer that you're going to use to execute your command. So we have to run this, and then we've created that. So now let me do, if I do my cursor, see, my cursor, this is an arrow here. You can be any name. I'm the one even giving myself stress by typing arrows and all of those things. My cursor is dot execute, and then I pass the, okay, now what do I want to execute? I want to execute this code which says select star from the name of my database, which was going to be from this thing. What is the name of that table? What's the name of the table? What's the name of that table? C students. This is the table that I created, right? This is the name of the table that I created. So if I can run this, where's my, run here. So let me see if I see this, somebody has a creation. My code is taking forever to run. Pip install MySQL connector Python. Is there a problem with installing? Maybe it's internet connection. You have to check your internet connection, best man. You have to check your internet connection, right?
All right.
Hey, best man.
So Andre, it's not that bad because I've not gone up. I just wonder if the
Pardon?
package is that heavy. Is the package heavy? This is MySQL connector. MySQL connector.python.
I don't think so. I don't think it's heavy, right? I don't think it's heavy. So
Okay, so keep trying.
maybe it has executed.
No, it hasn't. It's just
Maybe it's
there.
just an internet thing.
Okay.
Maybe it's just an internet. It's just an internet thing.
Okay, cool.
So let's
MySQL code.
yes. I was just trying to let me. I think I'm just if I do this, it's just going to confuse those of you who are really not following. Let me try to do something here. Let me see. I'm within this thing. Can I run let me see. Can I run? I think there's a function called show tables, right? Yeah, there's a function called show tables. And if I run this function,
That
it's going to
number
tell
the
me,
money.
oh, I have a table called,
Well, sure,
Good night.
why you talking?
Good night.
it's going to tell me I have a table called, you see, I created a table here called C students, right? So now that I've created a connection to this database, let me run that code here using this thing, execute show table. Is this supposed to be a string? I'm sure. Let me run this as a string. Let me run this. Oh, let me see why it's error in SQL syntax. Check the manual tag corresponding to my SQL Server version. The right syntax to use is at line 1. Which one is line 1? Where did I get? Did I spell something wrongly? Am I supposed to run this as a string, or it's just going to be? I think it's supposed to be a string, right? Invalid syntax, right? Yeah. How about I do this? How about I do this? It's still rejecting. Did I execute this line of code where I created my cursor? Yep, this executed successfully. So my cursor dot execute. You have an error in your SQL syntax. Check. Oh, my SQL syntax. Let me see which one can I use. Show tables, not table. Thank God. I was just wondering why I'm getting show tables, not table. Let me run this with this semicolon and see if it still work. Let me run it without the semicolon and see if it still work. This one I'm not testing it. Oh no, I get a syntax error. Read not found. Okay. This one, I never tested this one to see whether it works without the semicolon. On read found, what do you mean by on read found? If I would have, oh shit, I already executed it already. So the problem I was supposed to do was, can I say results? Let me assign this to result and then I'll return results, right? Is this still gonna give me a problem? Shit, on read results found, so I might have to rerun all of this again. Results. It's not defined, so I have to run this again. How am I getting this unread thing? Why is it coming up? Let me think. Is it because this thing is holding that information within the blah, 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 blah? So the prep, unread results. Yeah, I know you're saying unread results, right? So why are you telling me it's unread? I could have just held it here, and I can bring them out. What if I do this? Maybe it's because, what if I do print? It's gonna work. Just wondering. Let me create a different connection. Shift enter again, and shift enter. Okay. It returns none. Yeah. Then what if I say results? Okay, let me say results is equals to let me just pick this. Let me pick this. And then I return results. So if I run, I return results. If I run this, what do I get? It still gives me this unread error thing, which I'm not understanding. Okay, what if I say unread and I say from, let me say from oh no, let me use this one. Select star, where star? From C student, right? I think it's students. That's the name of my database. Yeah. So let's start from C students. Okay, now if I do this, okay, I should expect some results here now, blah, 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 because now this one should be holding something else. It's still giving me an error. Fuck. Oh,
Sorry, Prof. Why are you using cursor? The cursor.
It's your executor because
Why are you
I
using the
want to
cursor
run.
method? Okay.
I want to run this thing. I want to run. See, you see this? This is not a Python syntax, right? This is not Python. This is SQL, right? See, this is the same. This is the same query I
Okay.
wrote here now. Do you see this?
Yeah.
This is not Python syntax. So if I have to be
Yes, it's
able
not.
to customize my Python to execute SQL syntax, I have
SQL.
to use this. I have to create a cursor, right? This is a function that is there.
Cursor object.
Yeah, and then you use the
Okay.
cursor now to execute. That's why I say my cursor.execute. You see, I use the execute function, and then it's supposed to execute my this thing.
You want to create a virtual environment that's MySQL in your Python environment.
Pardon.
That's the cursor.
Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah.
cursor enables you to create a MySQL object in your Python
Mm-hmm.
environment, so I can use those SQL command line.
Yeah, to fetch your to run SQL commands. Let me use
Okay.
this one called. There's a function here called. Let me just see what I have in my cursor. There's a function called there's a function called fetch all my cursor. So dot. I think there's a function called fetch all. Then if I run this, I want to see what is inside this cursor. It says C students. Okay. Yeah, that means, oh yeah. But if I have to rerun this again, isn't it supposed to change? Right? You see, when I say show me, when I executed this one, right? When I executed this one, and then I print fetch all, it returns C student, which is what I was expecting here, because if we come here and if I run this, see, if I run this, it returns C student because that's the name of the table that I'm looking for, because it's the table I created here. So I was trying to see the same thing here. I was trying to run it the same way here and then get the result. And then when I use fetch all, it returns the thing. But then the next thing I want to do is I want to hold these results in So one thing I can do is I can create another connection. I don't know if this is going to work. Can I just change his name just for some reason, because I just feel like, can I just call it cursor? Yep. Let me just run this, okay? And so instead of using, so let me just comment out this line of code. I just want to test something, okay? Then if it works and it gives me the expected results, and then I'm going to explain to you. Let me just say, let me execute it. I want to pick. So let me just call them, can I just say data? Because this is actually going to be my data that I want to pick is equals to, data is equals to cursor dot execute. I want to execute a SQL command, and this SQL command that I want to execute, right? So this SQL command that I want to execute is select star from what's the name, C students. Now that I know, oh, it's not big, it's C students. From C students, and then I want to return data. And then I run this, it doesn't give me anything. So if I do cursor dot fetch all, fetch, okay, can I say maybe data one? I think I made a miss here. Maybe I would have just done that down here. Data one is equals to cursor. Is it cursor or cursor? Dot fetch all. Let me fetch all what I have in my memory in that space, and then it's gonna be coming from data, right? And fetch all, and then I have data, right? Or it takes a positional argument to say fetch all takes one positional argument to were passed. Can I just change this? Let me just run this directly. Data one, sorry. It returns an empty list. Why? Something is not working the way I don't want to loop through these things. Create your cursor, create a cursor, of course, it's an object. Then use it to execute your reason. That's what's not fetch all. Yep. Let me just do it the way I documented it here and see if something will change. So what I want to do now is I'm going to rerun this. Okay. And then I rerun this. Awful. Once I rerun this, and then I'll just do it the way I executed it. It now works. Okay. And then data one is in the form of a list of dictionaries. And if I use, let me say df is equal to d dot JSON. Sorry, JSON. How do you spell JSON again? JSON underscore normalize. And then I pass data one to it. Data one, and then I return df. I should get a data frame. They seem like what we had. Oh, love. No, it doesn't get, oh no, this is not going to be a dictionary. Oh yeah. Yep. This is a list, right? Oh, sorry, this was not a dictionary. This was a list. I didn't even see a list of tuples, not a list of dictionaries. So that's why it did not work. So I can just write this directly by saying that df is equals to pd.data, right? You remember this function data frame, and then I just pass data one to this, data one to this. And if I return ZF, this one should give me a data frame. Yes. Yes. Give me a data frame. Now, this data frame does not have headers, right? This data frame does not have headers. So, so the headers are in the description. I think I indicated that line of code somewhere over here. Okay, column names, yeah. So, yep. I can do this. So, there is a part called, can I just run it? Not, can I just run cursor dot, dot description? Description. I think it's a function. Description is not a function. Is it just, okay, got you. Okay. So I see these, and then this is a list. Please just let me test what I'm doing, and then I'll explain to you, okay? Don't get lost in what I'm doing. I return a list, and if I look at what I had here, I was picking the first. Yep. So if I look through, so for, so if I say for I in cursor dot description, for I in cursor dot description, which I have these, and then if I say, okay, let me see, I need something to hold this thing inside, right? I have, let me see, names is equals to an empty list. So I would say the names dot append so now I'm gonna have I position 0, right? Yeah, because this is position 0 for each of these records, position 0, position 0. So if I return position 0, then this should give me this. Then I'm gonna return names, right? This should give me my column names. And if I run this, I get this here. So if I come and then I do this, right? And then here I see data is this, and then if I do shift tab, there should be a function here called column names. Columns equals to, yeah. So if I use this function, I get what I'm looking for. So if I say columns here should be equals to, I want to use names as my column names. Yeah. Sorry, I don't want, it's already a function that is defined. And so if I run this, I get this. Great. Great. Okay. Let me explain. So if you were distracted because you were not understanding what I'm saying, now you can come back. I was just testing some of my hypotheses to see whether they are working. Okay. Awesome. Now let's see, we started by creating our data in our SQL database. So in your own case, if you're working in a company, the company already has this data, okay? The company already has this data in their database. So we have all this data in our data, all this data. It could be thousands of records, but they are going to be looking like something like this, right? So your job is connect to this database, pull that data from that database, and use it. And normally your database will, when you are hosting, you might have a lot of databases like you see here. I created a database called Champions. There's one called Glorious Bash. All of these databases are different databases, right? And so I think that I even have a huge set of data here, view tables, students. I think there's a sales table here. Let me print, let me use week, it's called weekend class. So it's called weekend class, right? And then I'm gonna execute that. So I'm gonna execute this, right? So I'm using a different database now. So I'm using a different database. I'm not using this database again. I'm using this one. And so if from this weekend class, there's a table that I'm seeing there called sales. So I can say, I can use select.
Sorry, Prof.
Yeah.
For this database, can you show how you created it again in the other part?
But let me pull this one. I want to see whether this thing has much data. Select star from sales, right? Yeah, I think this one has a lot of data. Yeah, there's a lot of data here. Okay, yeah, what was the question again, best man? I sent you the code for how to create this thing. You create a database by using the function called create database. That's a function. You create database is straight. Create database and then the name of your database, and then you execute that. Always put a semicolon at the end before you execute. So that's the function. That's how you create a database. And then after you create a database, since you have multiple databases, you have to tell your SQL server which database you want to use. So you have to tell them use. That's why I was using Champion, because I created it here and then I used Champion. So when I wanted to change to a different database, because I have a lot of them here, you see I have multiple databases here. So I wanted to change to this weekend class. Because I remember I had some data here, so I was interested in looking at this database. So I see from this database, there's this thing called weekend class. And then then there is a table there called sales table with a lot of data. And you see there's a lot of data there. So assuming you are working for a company and they have this data in one of their databases, and your job is to access this data and then analyze it. So let's access this one. I think this one is better. So I'll come back to my Python environment. So the first thing is you have to create your connector and blah, 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 blah. So I'm going to create a new connector. This time around, the only thing that is going to change is the database name. So I'm creating a new connector, right? I'm creating a new connector. So you follow it from here. So the syntax is you give your connector a name and then my connector.connect, the host, the root, the password, and all of that. You already have that. This time around, the database we are using is called week. What was it? Was it week? Someone come and do something here. It's called weekend class. Okay, weekend class. Weekend class. That's the database I'm using here. So after that, the next thing that I have to do now is I can say my cursor, which is going to be what I'm doing, should now be equals to so I'm creating a new cursor right here, right? So it should be MB MDB, my DB, this one, this variable name that I created here. So don't think my DB is something dot cursor. So this is the function that we are using. And like Bestman was trying to explain, it creates a virtual environment which can enable you run SQL code. So if I execute all of these, I've connected to the database, and now I can use this cursor that I've created to run SQL code. And the SQL code I want to run is the SQL code that is going to fetch this fetch this data. So I can copy this SQL code, this one like this, and run it there, this one. So I can say my cursor dot execute, which is going to be the function. And so what am I executing? You always remember to run it as a string, okay? You can execute select sales from so since you already said you were using this database, there's no need to say use, because if you did not specify this parameter, this one, if you did not specify this parameter, I would have explicitly have to, first of all, run this one first before running this one. using the cursor. But since I already specified the database that I'm using in my connection, then I can just go straight and then query my data directly without necessarily having to do anything, right? And then I can see my data now is equals to my cursor dot fetch all. Sorry, it's dot, not dot with a comma, fetch all. That's the function. And then once you run that, you can now return data. So remember, I use this to execute my MySQL command. So you see, this is the data that I've returned here. All of that much data, but this data is so huge that it's now much. So let me write it to a data frame. So if I write it to the data frame, I'm going to see my df1, which is my data frame, is going to be equals to pd dot data. There's something called with this function called data frame, and then I'm just going to pass data here, right? Now once I run this and I return df1, I'm going to have this now as a data frame, but it's not going to have headings, right? You see, there's a lot of data. It has 2,387 records, right? There's a lot of data in it. But I'm not gonna, now in this case now it's different because I'm not going to, it doesn't have column names. So I wanted to prove to you how to get the column names. There's a function called your cursor has another function called, there's a part called my cursor, it's a method. My cursor, there's a part called description. I'll come and explain to you what the description part is. My cursor dot description, and then I'll tell you where it's coming from, okay? If I run this, you see it gives me a list of tuples. So it's a list of tuples. So you see this is the first element in this list, which is a tuple. This is the second element in this list, which is a tuple. This is the second element, right, which is a tuple. And one thing you notice in this tuple is that the first element of that tuple is going to be your column name, right? The first element is going to be your column name. Each first element, so every index 0 in that tuple is going to be your column name. So how can we just pick index 0 in this tuple? So what we're just going to do is that we can just say for I in my cursor dot description, which is going to return all of these. Of course, you could have just equated this to maybe a variable and maybe say headings or something. Headings. I don't know, it's a very bad word. Maybe the bad name that I'm giving it, I'm just gonna return headings here. So if I return headings, you get the same thing, right? So if I say for I in headings, which is a list, right? For I in headings, so I'm going to create an empty list that's going to hold my name. So let me say column name, call underscore names. This one should just be a list. It can be a list, anything, even a tuple. It depends on you. So I'm going to say call underscore names, oh, blah, 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 index, indentation error. Call underscore names dot append, right? You are appending. You know this because this is a list function dot append. So for I is gonna, so if I is going to just be each of these, right? Each of these tuples. I is going to be each of these tuples, right? So for example, okay, so if I print I, let me show you. If I print I, so that the people who are not understanding, you see, if I print I, it returns these individual tuples. Then if I print I position 0, right? See. Oh, no, this is going to be wrong, syntax. Brings I position 0, bro. Don't do that kind of thing again. You see, I get only the column names, right? So the question is, why am I? So what I can do is that instead of printing them, I can hold them in this my list. So instead of doing this, I will just say call underscore names dot append, and then I'm appending all of this, right? So now if I do this and I return, if I return call underscore names, you see I'm going to get a list that has only this. You see I got a list that has only those variable names. Now, so now, having done that, now we can come to this function and then give our data frame a name, column names. So there's a function here that is called columns. If you do shift tab, you're going to see that there's a function called columns. That's what I'm using. So when you use columns, you have now to equate it to this one that we call names, right? So I'm going to say columns is equals to call names, call underscore names, and then, yep, it's already a variable that I've defined. So if I run this, you see, my data now has column names. Blue, 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 blue. So now this is a data frame in Python. I can begin to do anything with this data now. I can do the shape, right? df1 dot shape, like we already know. df1 not s1. df1 dot shape. You see we have 11 columns. So I can do df1 dot columns, right? When we run columns, it gives us the column names. So we can do df1 dot is null and then what are we going to run? Sum. So that's sum. So we're running. We notice that most of the columns do not have empty rows, but for each has a lot of empty. There are a lot of empty. You see, out of 200, in short, the each column is virtually empty. Because you see, and you can see it from here, it's showing none, 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 none. So what can I do? I can say df1 dot drop, right? df1 dot drop, and I say columns is equals to the column that I want to drop is this stupid one that has just none, 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 right? Oh wait, where can I pick it? Okay. So I don't want it because it's showing me trouble. And then I can see in place is equals to true. Remember, in place is equals to true, meaning that we want the effect only on ZF1. And so if it is return ZF1 now, and then we run this, we get this, right? You see the number of columns has reduced from 11 to 10. And if we run this again, we don't have any. We see now that everything is fine. We can do zf1.info to check .info, right? You can do zf1.info to check for, let me run this as a function, as a method, to check for you see some of them are objects, some of them are actually integers. So you see objects are these ones that are textual, integers are the ones that are numbers, right? So you see it, we've imported the data. You can begin to do all the things that we've learned in the past. If you now can we'll see. Hey, have we done? Okay, we have not done data cleaning. We can now begin to clean the data and then begin to see all the wahalas. Yeah, we have not yet reached this part. Yeah, we've not reached this level. So, yep. So far, Any questions? You have sample data that you can test this on. I shared it in the chat. So when you go, use the data that I've sent to you plus that code to test it and see whether you can also pull that small data. So you should end up for the one that you will go and do at home. You don't have this huge data. This was just an example. So you don't have this huge data, but you should be able to come up with this one. This is the sample that we did. You should be able to come up with this one. Is that okay? From the data in the chart, you should be able to have this one. This small one that we have here like this. So we have successfully connected to a database, a MySQL database, pull the data from the SQL database, and then we've used the data to do a lot of things. So you can come here. Okay, now I wanted to explain this description part. Oh, where in the now? Okay, yeah, this part now, that is what I wanted to explain. Oh yeah, this part, let me show you. You actually created it here, right? When you were doing this, you see this part? You see this part like this part where you were creating a database and you were specifying, this is the description. You were saying that you want to create a table called students. That table should have an ID that is of nature integer, name which is of nature varchar, age, which is the description. So when you do this, when you create your cursor, it holds that this is the information that it holds, and that is why you are able to pull it up here like this as a list, and they make it so nice. The function is so powerful that it holds it as a list, and you can now actually look through and pick all the small, the first elements, and then use it, wrap it, shoot it to your data frame, and everything is now looking so beautiful. You can now plot this data. You can draw bar charts, you can check the relationship between the different variables, blah, 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 blah. Maybe sales. Now look at this data. You might want to check whether sales depends on what is the thing that is influencing sales. You know, a lot of things, price, quantity, check the relationship between price and quantity. All of this is good data you can actually play around with to get some awesome plots and graphs that you can even add to your resume and set you were able to manipulate data from an e-commerce website. Yeah. Any questions?
The fetch command, the code for that is
It's
you
fetch all,
listed it,
not
but you
fetch.
didn't drop the code. The
Fetch all.
is a method under cursor.
Pardon?
Fetch all. Can you
It's
paste
fetch
that?
all, not
Can you
fetch.
paste line two one fetch
One
all
line number again.
122 and 123. Can you paste it, please?
Can I please read it?
No, paste it on the chat so I can
Oh, okay. I should paste it on the chat.
so I can
Okay.
just try and
I've
answer it.
already pasted line. I already pasted this one, right? These are just the one that I can paste. This one is already on the chat. This one is already on the chat.
Yeah, it is.
I already have this one, right, on the chat. This one is on the chat. So the one I can add is this one, which I would have loved you to go and create your own yourself because it's just simple. And then this one is just the execute. You are just executing that SQL code, right? You can test it out yourself and let me see. Where chat there? Okay. When you try it, if you're having issues, then that is where I can answer your question. But for now, me, I don't know what you did not understand or what you understood or what you assumed. Mr. Tony, this one that you are quiet. Dr. Kifa. Is Dr. Kifa on the call? I think he was the first person to react when I came to class, right? Oh, a lot of people have dropped. Madam Prudence, is it going?
It's not going now.
Okay,
I'm
but
just
I'll leave
watching.
you
It's
with the
not
video
going.
so that you can practice, okay? But if you have a question, then that is where it's going to be nice for us to tackle it from. You understand?
They might.
Madam Prudence, did you hear what I said? I'm sure your network is not really good. So watch the video, practice it. Then that is the only time that if you have a
Okay.
question, then it will be easy for us to tackle it. Because from now, I really can't tell where there is a loophole or there's no loophole, right? Desmond, you're trying to say something?
Especially when it's SQL. That's why I just got
Yeah,
confused.
yes, I said this MySQL. You once we pass it using the connector method, we kind of use we create a my cursor object, then we start manipulating the my cursor object, because if you throw that my cursor object into the directory module, you kind of see all the metadata, which is fetch all and execute. So you fetch all before you execute. I think the sequence of things is something else to look at. You have to fetch it when you get the database in your Python notebook or your Python environment. Then you have to execute. You can execute a line, a SQL line, like you highlighted in the double quotation mark. Then after executing it, then you can now fetch it to a data form. You can now convert that data form to a pandas data frame that you can now manipulate. So I think it's in that order of sequence of things. I'm just trying to
I think
put
you
it.
can also, I think you can loop through. I think that there was a time I looped through. I think you can loop through, right? Instead of using fetch all, right? I think you can loop. Because this fetch all, if you look detail into this fetch all function, it's just some sort of a loop. It's just saving you from looping. You understand?
Okay.
Let me try that here. Where did I do cursor here? So instead of, you see here, right? So I think if I do, let me just try. I don't know. If I do for I in cursor here, right? Cursor, for I in cursor here, right? If I print I without using fetch all, right? If I print I, what do I get? Weekly reference object no longer exists. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, let me run this one again. Run this one again. Run. This one is not existing, so I don't want that one. So run this one, and then I run. You see, You see now, instead of fetching all, I just loop through. You can see that, best man. Best man, are
Okay.
you there? So instead
I'm
of
with
fetching
you.
all, you can just loop through, and then instead of looping through,
Can you
say,
hear me?
are you getting me?
Okay.
You can, instead of even looping through, you can just write it from here straight to a list. Right? So instead of doing this, I can just create an empty list here, right? I can just create an empty list here called S is equals to, I just do this. So instead of doing this, I just do S dot append I, right? It's just that I think it's less efficient because of the loop. So I think fetch all is more efficient. I don't know. And then if I return S now, I'm going to get the same results that fetch all is going to return. Oops, so I have to rerun this again. Boring. You see, I now get a list, right? So I can now write this list to, I can now see my df3, for example, is equals to pd dot data stream, you understand? And then I just do S. And then if I return df3, I get the same result that I got down here. And then now, if I now use predict this description, and then I can create the variable name. So it's either you use fetch or you just loop through the cursor object. You get it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Where does the execute come from? At what point do you use the execute?
The execute is you use the execute is a function within your cursor to actually execute the SQL command that you are going to use to pull the data, because this is the command that pulls the data from the database. You know that this is the
Okay.
command that pulls, but this is not a Python code.
Yeah.
But this is
SQL
not a
code.
Python, it's not a Python syntax. So that's where the cursor.execute comes in really handy to help you. So you can use this thing to execute you can even use it. See, I remember there was a session sometime. It's just that it's been a while I did it. But I remember there was a session sometime I can actually use this thing to actually create all these things that we were creating here. You know that, right? If I use that command, I can copy all of this and paste within this thing, and then I execute all of these things line by line, and then I end up with something like this, and I can come here, refresh, and see everything inside here. You understand? But since that is not a session, we are just using it to pull our data. We are just using it to pull our data, but you can also use it to write all those commands and execute them, create databases, like everything, and it's still going to work. You understand? But since our goal here was just to use it to go and pull our data, we don't need to be going through all of that. Okay, let's see what we have left so that we can round up with this, so that next week we do something else. The last thing that is left is writing that data to as an output. So can I, after cleaning this data down here, I can actually write this data out to an output, right? This is my data that I clean here, even though it's going to be really heavy for me, right? You remember I cleaned this data, I dropped a column, I don't have an H column again, so I can now see my clean data, clean underscore data is equals to pd.to, that's the function, to CSV. I want to save it as a CSV, to CSV, and then where do I want to save it? Okay, let me save it where I have all this other data. So I'm going to copy that my path. Where's my path? My path is up somewhere up here. Oh, yep. Let me put it here. Oh, no, what am I doing? Why am I even saving it in a variable? Eh? Why am I crazy or something? And best man, you are looking at me save this thing to a variable. Does it make sense?
I'm trying to.
So I'm gonna do cleaned underscore data. Okay. So I save it to a CSV, right? And then if I run this, pg, why is it saying module pandas has no attribute to CSV? Are you crazy? Where you need now? You don't output to. What do I have here? It's 2 underscore CSV. Right? Okay, it's a data frame function. Sorry. It's not a pandas function.
Oh,
So that data frame, how did I call the data frame here? ZF1. ZF1. So now if I go, I'm looking for, if I come to that my directory, right? The directory where I should see that file there. But it's huge too. So I know my computer is going to take some time to whip it. If my computer is fast enough, I should have it there. So if I look here, I should see that data file. I can refresh, right? You know, I even come in, I did not check whether it executed. Let me check the directory again. Let me check the directory to be sure I'm in the right directory. So I have to go under examples. Okay. I have to come here and then let me see. Oh yeah, I have to refresh. Wait, when I turned there, who saw that the thing was done executing? Oh, you people are leaving me to suffer alone. Cleaned CSV, this is it. If I open this file, you see that it does not have that column called H. You see, there's no H column there. So we have cleaned our data and we have exported it to a CSV file. If you wanted to export it to an Excel file, you can, instead of using to_CSV, use to_Excel. I can do this again. So instead, Excel, but then you have to change this output there. You cannot say to Excel and then is it XLX? No, let me confirm it. File save as, let me see the extension. I always forget this extension for Excel. XLSX, okay. XLSX, okay. So now this is going to be an Excel file. So if I run this again, oh, yep. So if I come here, I should see another file, which is Excel. You see, these are the two files here. One is CSV, another one is Excel. You know, today I noticed that CSV files are heavier than Excel files. Wow, I did not know. So that is how you can now output your file. So when you clean your data and you finish and everything is looking good, and then now you can output it in any form that you want, and then you share with your teammates, and then they take it from there. If you want to use it to train a machine learning model, then you can take it from there. They can use it from there and begin to do whatever they want to do with it. So I'm going to leave you all to practice, and then let's meet in our next class, and I'll be hoping that over the week, if you have any questions, you can ask me, and then if there's anything that we can also you can also send me a text.
Bro, are we going to get this file that contains this whole code?
You are talking about this notebook?
This notebook, yeah, this notebook. Yeah.
Yes, I can share it. Right? I can share
Okay.
it. Oh wait, let me just share it now as we are in class, because if I drop from this call, trust me, I'm not going to share it again. So let me just save the checkpoint, and then I have to drop back again. Where is it? I have to drop back again, but I have to click here. So let me pull up my drive, and then I upload it there for you all to see. So that's going to be shared with me, because there's a shared drive we're using for these. And then I'm looking for Solovis data science, Solovis no, where's that data science webinar? Everything here is okay. This is the one I'm looking for. And then inside here, I'm looking for this your own batch, right? This your own batch. So I'm just going to come here, new file upload. I'm going to pick this from here. I'm going to upload it. So it's uploading. Once it's uploaded, you have access to it. Okay, so you can practice. Okay, now it's done, right? It's done.
Okay,
So you
thank
can
you.
now have access to it. Okay, thank you all. See you in our next class next Tuesday. Bye-bye.